This program was made possible by the law firm of Zalman and Schnorman, whose practice is limited to personal injury and insurance law. Welcome to Lawline with your host, Alan Schnorman. Mr. Schnorman is a distinguished trial attorney, author, and lecturer. Each week, Lawline will bring you the most knowledgeable experts in the field of law today. And now, we introduce our guests and our host, Alan Schnorman.
Welcome to Lawline. Most trial attorneys will agree that the makeup of the jury is one of the most important factors in determining the outcome of their case. With the court's recent elimination of the jury duty exemptions, we are now seeing lawyers, doctors, even judges amongst those sitting on juries. Today we'll find out what effect this new jury pool has had on negligence verdicts. Our guests are the Honorable Walter Tollip, Acting Supreme Court Justice, New York County, and Ivan Schneider, a personal injury attorney whose firm holds 7 out of 10 of the state's highest verdicts on record. Hello, Judge Tollip.
Good evening.
Hello, Ivan. Okay, Ivan, tell us, how important is the jury selection in your cases?
It's the whole thing. When you walk in and you get a panel, that's determined the event of your case. You may be a good lawyer or a bad lawyer, you may bring down a verdict or raise the verdict, but the panel that you get will determine the end, no matter what you do.
Now, Judge, the panels in New York County, and especially all over the state, have changed dramatically, but especially here in New York where you have so many doctors, lawyers, and even judges. What has been your experience now?
Well, our experience in New York County is the fact that we're getting much lower verdicts and we're getting many more defendants' verdicts. And probably based on the fact that we do have doctors, lawyers, judges sitting on panels right now. And the plaintiff's bar is exercised, but that's what's going on.
Now, Ivan, I know in the past you used to love New York County. You used to work almost exclusively here. What about now?
I hide now. I try not to go there. I go there as seldom as possible. I don't think that they have a proper amount of minorities on New York County juries. I also think that this whole thing about professionals being on juries, judges, doctors, you try a case and you're talking to a doctor about osteoporosis of a leg or another injury. In one case I tried exactly with osteoporosis. It was the emergency room head of Bellevue Hospital I was talking to in my opening about osteoporosis. It's ridiculous. Don't you think he's going to carry the whole jury?
Well, I think you're simplifying things because, quite frankly, what you're seeing is a reaction basically to decades of plaintiffs' verdicts. And I'm really quoting your own partner, who in a monograph that he wrote in the summer, I believe, of last year, indicated that the heyday of plaintiffs' high verdicts is over. And what he pointed to was the fact that the insurance industry has succeeded in bringing their message across, and that by emphasizing these spectacular verdicts in these seemingly ridiculous cases, the insurance industry has managed to not brainwash, but to convince the general public that, in fact...
I think McDonald's verdict is a blight on the plaintiff's bar. In fact, it was a justifiable verdict if anybody reads it. But jurors invariably say, when you're talking about a very large case, they invariably refer to the McDonald verdict, especially in New York County. And you can't explain to them why the McDonald case was a good case.
Well, you know, the plaintiff's bar, shoots itself in the foot, as it were. You will notice from time to time, if you read the New York Law Journal, that every time there's a very large plaintiff's verdict, the plaintiff's firm manages to get it inserted in the Law Journal. And this is kind of a form of advertising. It says A, B, and C have collected a massive verdict for their client so-and-so, and they put the name of the other attorney, and they put the name of the judge, and it's all well and good, except that feeds the insurance industry's propaganda to the effect that there are major, massive verdicts. And every time you have one of those, and I know a number of firms who do that, every time you have those verdicts publicized, for whatever reason, now you're going to see it bounce back in your face.
I'm guilty of that, but can you tell how one trial lawyer separates himself from another trial lawyer without doing that? I'm guilty of having my verdicts in the Law Journal. If we get a big verdict, I think it should be...
You've gotten verdicts of $1 million, $10 million, I think you even got $100 million, I saw that. But what I want to know is, now when you go to New York County, for other lawyers, how do you talk to the judge who may be sitting on your panel, or the lawyer, or even a doctor? How do you How do you approach that jury differently than you did years past when you did not have a judge, a doctor, or a lawyer sitting on your panel?
I think you try the same case. I really do. I think that this whole jury selection of picking for 2 or 3 days that plaintiffs' lawyers did, and I don't think I was ever guilty of that, was ridiculous. I think you have to talk to these people with a lot of common sense. You have to pick a quick jury. When you talk to people like that, they get insulted if you repeat yourself. All these things that I see a lot of lawyers do cannot be done with intelligent jurors. They walk in suspecting plaintiffs' lawyers. So I recommend that plaintiffs' lawyers get their point across as quickly as possible and then get off the stage. And certainly don't pull any shtick, in quotes, with that type of jury.
Judge? Harvey Waits pointed out in that monograph, I love to feed it back to his partner, of course, that we have a new generation of people that are used to those 15-second sound bites, and that in former days where you could make a presentation of some length, they don't buy that now. They won't listen to you beyond a certain amount of time. They're not used to listening. They turn off immediately. And that's why you have what you have.
They come in thinking a plaintiff's lawyer is vile. And if you try to sell, and you're trying to fool them, and if you try to sell them, if you do anything like that, oh, we're asking for millions of dollars and all of that stuff, and they'll go through your case and say why it's great, you've lost the case in the jury room.
Yes, they just don't buy it.
Because before the plaintiff's attorney even starts speaking,
they suspect everything bad about him. They've read
anything
somewhere
about a lawyer. They suspect anything about a lawyer.
It's mostly the plaintiff's bar at this point. The Republicans and Bush, this all came about with the Bush campaign, if you recall, when he went on national television in one of the debates. And one of the things he talked about was jury verdicts.
Judge, is this truly a jury of one's peers?
Well, I would say it's probably more representative in New York County than it was before. What Ivan fails to point out is the fact that in past years that we had a very, very heavily minority-based jury in New York County. And that was born out of the fact that the system allowed people to escape jury duty. Anyone of any consequence or of any wealth, actually, could escape jury duty. There were many ways to get around it, and some of it was scandalous, by the way. The old sheriff's panel was something that was an outrage, and of course it was abolished. But your juries are basically minority juries. Now you have a better balanced panel in the sense that at least now you have some middle class. There's no reason why a doctor shouldn't sit on a jury, or a lawyer.
A doctor could sit on a criminal case, right, but should a doctor who's an orthopedist sit on an orthopedic injury? Do you want a juror to be an expert and in fact be trying it for one person, that orthopedist?
Well, you're assuming that one person is going to take over the panel.
I think it's a reasonable assumption.
No, that's not a reasonable assumption. I sat as a law student on 3 panels in civil New York while I was in law school, and I made a point of distancing myself and speaking last, and in point of fact...
Judge, you can now have a judge on a panel.
Yes, you can, and judges have served on panels.
Not that I've actually seen that they've been selected on
yes, in the Bronx,
in New York County, too.
Right.
In New York County.
I know, in the Bronx.
Yes, we had judges serve.
Isn't there a natural feeling, if I'm a fellow juror and you're a judge, and you try these cases all the time, when we go into the deliberate in the room and you say, let me explain something to you. Now, I found this, this, and this, and the judge on the law really meant...
Well, you're presuming that the judge is going to do that. Any judge with any common sense will not do that.
No?
No.
He's going to forget what he believes the law is.
No, he's disciplined enough. I sit on non-jury cases.
I think you do that all the time.
I do the same thing.
But then the lawyers deliberately chose to go non-jury. But when I pay for a jury, I don't expect one person on there who's learned in the law and is going to be talking to lay people who will naturally all listen to them.
Ivan, tell me, which jurors do you like the best? What do you look for?
I really do look for, at this point, intelligent jurors. I really do. But I don't look for experts in the field. I don't look for judges. I don't look for doctors if I'm trying a malpractice.
Will you take an accountant?
I would prefer not to have an accountant.
Would you take an investment banker?
I have had remarkable success with investment banking on very large
entrepreneurs.
Cases. Would I take an engineer? I'll take an engineer. I won't take an engineer on a roadway case, on a building case, because they're coming in with their ideas. In their mind, they're designing it. So forget the law, forget the facts. I'm getting their opinion. Now, judges are going to tell you you're wrong, and suddenly people become superhuman because they're jurists. But human beings are human beings, and they follow what they do.
I don't know, are there certain occupations that you prefer as opposed to other occupations?
Yes.
What are they?
I like a hard worker. Give me a truck driver, people like that.
Taxi driver.
Taxi cab driver, people who dirty their hands, people who have,
Economist?
first of all, it's not fair for me to say most of the cases I try have economists. Should an economist sit on a case when another economist is testifying? I guess under the new law that should be. I think it's wrong. I always used to think it was wrong. And an economist couldn't sit on a case when an economist was testifying. Now I guess they can.
Let me point out one thing which is very interesting. When the system first went into place,
And it's only a number of years now that it started, a year and
we're
something.
about 16 months or something,
Right.
or whatever the date is. When it first started, I was sitting at that point in time in a TAP part. And
That was the city tap part,
that was
wasn't
the
it?
city TAP part. It's a trial assignment part. It's the part where I assign cases out to the 12 judges who are my receivers, as it were. And I saw literally hundreds and hundreds of cases every week. And I saw dozens upon dozens of attorneys every day. And I started to ask them, you go across the street, or literally not even across the street, you go a couple of 100 feet to the east of us, and you're in the federal court. And I know that the federal court is notorious in terms of selecting juries in record amounts of time.
Usually
And-
an hour and a half.
And lawyers are not excluded from federal juries, and all sorts of professionals do serve on federal juries. And I asked them, what's the big difference in terms of result? And most of them confessed to me that there was little or no difference.
Well, let's see, Ivan, you try cases. in
I've
federal
tried a
court.
number of federal court
Yeah.
cases. I've had good results there. I'm not against judges picking juries. I really am not. I think that New York juries, to some extent, judges picking them may help you. I think that lawyers make a lot of mistakes when they pick juries. I think the hard sell, all the things that lawyers are trained to do may be improper to juries like New York, Westchester, Nassau County. I think restraint is called for. And when a judge picks the jury, he's going to say what you say about substantial verdict, all of those things, and may get away with it for you. But when I come across and talk about substantial verdicts and things like that, they may think I'm selling.
But what happens if there's a juror number 5? Juror number 5 could not give a substantial verdict, even if it was warranted under the facts of the law, because they don't believe in it.
Then they shouldn't be sitting as jurors.
You know something, Judge? That's easy for you to say sitting here. But I tell you that my office had that challenge before a judge today, and the judge refused to give us that ruling. And most judges don't at this time, because the same belief takes place. All people should be on a jury. And that's what happens.
Judge, what about the situation where you have a lawyer who actually works for, who does business for insurance companies? They're not an employee of an insurance company, but that's what they do. They do insurance work.
Most judges and most lawyers I know will excuse that.
We'll excuse them.
Can lawyers do that? That's another thing. Lawyers no longer have the right. I have no right to agree with that, with Alan, for
I
argument's sake.
understand, but you can
That
always
we
go
can
down to the
stipulate
judge
that
and tell them, and I don't know any judge who would not excuse an attorney who's in that position.
Really?
I just had a case where there were persons
Judge,
excused.
Judge,
Just this
the
week.
wonderful
In New
thing
York
about
County.
judge,
New York
I-
County. I just had it.
Really?
I'm not saying this to pat you on the back. You are a very good judge, but not all judges are the same, and judges don't realize all judges are not the same.
Judge, how would you modify, if at all, the jury system now? If you had your
More
ability.
professionals.
At this point in time, I'm not sure how I would. The Association of the Bar and the New York County Lawyers Association is undertaking a survey probably this June as to how the system is working. I think it's a little premature to figure out, any fixes before we know what the problems are.
Ivan, if I gave you the power to change it, what would you do?
I would like to see a fair mix. I defy anybody to tell me that you have the proportion of minorities on civil juries in New York County as exists with the population.
Well, wouldn't that be the county clerk's job to bring in?
I do not blame the county clerk, who I think does a fine job.
But isn't that their job to bring in?
They bring them in
diverse-
randomly. I mean, this
I
is
have a
not...
suspicion about that. I don't know if I should say this on television.
Well,
What is it?
you already have.
My suspicion is that the criminal cases get a better selection, minorities and...
More of
all
a
the rest.
mix?
More of a mix, because
Than
I
civil?
think that the system caters to that system. Yes. It can only...
Aren't they-
it could
but
be-
I- Judge,
go-
it's
I
not the
think
same
you
jury
should
pool.
call Norman Goodman for your next
I
show.
think Mr. Goodman has done a wonderful job.
But
I'm
I
not gonna
think,
put him down.
I
It's
assume
fun.
they're the same jury pool.
They are the same jury pool. In point of fact, from what I've been told about the methodology that's used, it's purely
disagrees.
random.
Well, I would like somebody to walk through 60 Center Street on the 4th floor, and then walk to 80 Church,
100.
80 and 100, and 72 Thomas Street, and then come with me to 100 and go upstairs and look at the criminal part. jurors and see if they're the same.
Judge Kaye's
I have
already
taken
done that
our-
when she served it. She served it 100,
Judge,
by the way.
from what I understand, how they select jurors is certainly not a public, it's not public. I certainly don't see it in the Law Journal, how they will send out, to which type of people they will send out to. Do you know how they actually
There was a
select?
base list. I think you should have Norman Goodman to explain it to you. But there's a
Do you
base
know?
list based on the voting enrollment, on the license registrations, on taxes, and I mean there's a massive list.
What about
And
welfare?
by the way, it's detailed. It's detailed.
What
in the
about
rules.
welfare? Welfare rolls?
I don't think there's any drawing from the welfare rolls per se, but mixed in that you get welfare people. Sure, you have plenty of
There
welfare
was a
people.
new law passed, and they weren't able to do it right away, to follow that, which would have brought a more equal representation
Well,
on
there's-
juries.
I think it's pretty much
it took
equal
a
right now.
while to...
Well, maybe the first month, you know.
Okay, we have to go to a break now, but right after the break, we'll continue on which is the best juror and which is not. You're watching Lawline. I'm Alan Schnorman, your host. Stay with us.
Why would anybody give someone they don't know a gift? They do it because this gift saves lives. And the need for it is desperate. We need over 20,000 people to give this precious gift every day. Please give blood. There's a life to be saved right now. Call the American Red Cross at 1-800-GIVE-LIFE.
Hello, you're watching Lawline. I'm Alan Schnorman, your host. Today we're talking about juries and the high verdicts and the change of juries now that lawyers, doctors, and even judges can sit on juries. We have the Honorable Walter Tollip, Acting Supreme Court Justice, New York County, and Ivan Schneider of the firm of...
Schneider, Kleinig, White, Damashek, and Shoot.
Okay.
Is that a commercial or not? Yes.
Judge, tell me, what sense are you getting now that they've changed the makeup of the jurors? Are jurors happier? Do they approach you and say, I like what's going on here?
Well, we've had a number of judges sit on juries, and we had a federal court judge, as a matter of fact, last week, who was absolutely thrilled to sit, had defied most of his colleagues, I might add, sat before Judge Solomon, and confided in her, and I don't think it's really confidence, that he really enjoyed the experience and the interaction. Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Now,
I've had
I won't
judges.
name 'em.
I've had judges and juries. I've had appellate division judges in a panel and things like that. It's a very strange experience. It really is. You gotta make the lawyers think 3
Right,
times.
and of course, what we're talking about here is basically the basic of our system here is a jury, and the question is, are our juries now fair? Do they represent the community?
I personally think they're tilted. I think they're tilted the other way. I think they were tilted plaintiff for a while, and I'm the first to admit it. I think they're now tilted the other way. I think it's all types of things. It's the insurance industry, constant bombardment with propaganda. It's lawyers puffing themselves with huge verdicts in the New York Times and only saying the smallest part of the injury and not telling the jury, the newspaper, the whole story. I think it's hurt us.
I think I happen to have a Newtonian theory, as it were. For every action, you know, there's an equal and opposite reaction. For decades now, we've had tremendous plaintiffs' verdicts and a lot of publicity about that. I think what you're seeing now is more of a conservatism that's coming into the American public, in part based on insurance industry advertising, in part as a reaction to this decade or two of massive verdicts.
Yes, but Your
clearly
Honor,
disproportionate verdicts.
with all difference, Ivan tries cases where people are paraplegics,
Yes,
quadriplegics.
absolutely.
I mean, how much
I've had
money?
cases before
how
me.
much money do you give somebody who requires continuous medical care over the rest of their lives? Do you certainly?
Alan, I
Well,
had a
first of all,
jury
there's
say
a question of
to me,
liability. I mean, I have seen some of the most outrageous circumstances where people come up with fact patterns which result in terrible injuries. but there's no
I
liability.
agree with that.
And that's a terrible thing. I mean, it's a terrible thing to tell a person that you have no recourse in terms of suing someone or a big institution, or the fact that you were hit by someone who has a small
I
policy.
appreciate that, but the only point I was bringing out to that the large verdicts are in many instances fair and commensurate with the injury
And in
and the
many
medical...
instances, they're reduced in the appellate division. Nobody takes any publicity on
Well,
that.
I don't understand why if Yasha Heifetz plays the violin well and people love to see him, why a lawyer can't be very good. I really don't. The system is now, good lawyers should be destroyed. We don't need them, we have robots trying cases. One, I had a juror tell me in a quadriplegic case, why does he need money? What good is it going to do? I went to the judge and I said, Judge, do you think that, other than liability, there's damages? That juror, I had to use a parental challenge. I don't think the juries, by the way, are quite as bad as we're saying. I don't want to self-aggrandize, but last year I had a pretty good year trying cases, and the 3 verdicts were over $10 million. So the juries are not quite as bad. I think in a particular county, New York County, the swing is most. Brooklyn, I don't think it's changed. I think Queens has gotten much better, the jury representation. It's much fairer. The Bronx has remained the same.
But when you say the Bronx has remained the same, we always take the Bronx to task as being
Shouldn't.
the place where, somebody stubs his toe and they get a verdict that's like a telephone number. That has always been the rap on the Bronx. You've tried cases in the Bronx, I haven't. I read some of the verdicts from the Bronx and they seem to be outrageously high. I'd be curious to know what your
Well, let me
experience
tell
is
you
there.
something. I've had, not good, and I shouldn't say this thing on television. I'm not here to puff myself. I've had remarkable results in the Bronx. Always, the question that the jury spend the most time in the Bronx is liability. They will give you the damages. If they believe you're hurt, you're going to get a lot more money in the Bronx than you will in Brooklyn or Manhattan. However, with regard to liability, they are as tough as any other jurors. And I think if you read the jury verdict sheets carefully, you'll be shocked at the number of defendants' verdicts that take place in the Bronx.
Well, we've been surprised about the jury verdicts. I had the city part in... The city of New York had most of the cases in my part, 2/3 of the cases in my part. And over the period 1995, we discovered that as through cases that went to verdict, 22 out of 24 trip and falls, specialized area, were defendants' verdicts.
Yes, but Your Honor, something that I have to point out,
Sure.
as a plaintiff's attorney, I do not choose those cases I take to verdict. It's usually the defendants who choose by not making fair and reasonable offers.
Well, I have to tell you that the overwhelming number of cases in terms of trip and falls were settled at what you might consider outrageous prices, but were certainly, I thought, commensurate from time to time with, most of the time,
I
with what
Disagree with you,
the...
Alan. I think it depends on the attorney. I happen to agree with the judge. I think that people have this figure or this figure when they go into a case. And if you're asking for this figure, you're going to get your trial. And you better be prepared. Not all lawyers are prepared to try cases. Another thing that's happened, and that we forget about, the civil court is dead, or doesn't exist for a training ground, like the Borscht Belt existed for comics.
Right.
Where do people learn to try cases? I spent years in the civil court.
Oh, Ivan and I were just
met-
reminiscing that in 1969 or so, we were sitting around the
Watching
111th
Al
Street,
Julian, who was the
watching
greatest
Al
lawyer
Julian
I ever saw.
Go for $10,000, correct?
That's
And
right.
he hit the bell for $10,000, and there was yelling in the courthouse. Those days are gone. The training grounds are gone for young lawyers.
Judge, do you find that insurance companies are just not paying the kind of money easily that they used to pay?
Yes, because they're watching the verdicts now, and they're watching what's going on in the courthouses, and that reflects back in making their
Let me tell you,
offers.
Allstate and a few other insurance companies have a new machine called the Colossus,
Oh,
a
God.
computer.
Yes.
Well, they are doing remarkably well on no-fault cases. Why? Because juries are very loath to find
Whiplash.
whiplash cases.
Yes.
They all know whiplash. Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon starred in that movie, Things like
Fortune
that.
cookie.
They all know those things.
Great movie.
But when it comes to bigger cases, I'm shocked to find suddenly the Colossus machine doesn't exist. They call me up directly, and I say, "What's about your Colossus number?" "Oh, we can forget about it with that."
Well, when I left my part in January 13th of this year, Colossus was still operating on a lot of relatively low-level cases or cases that apparently, and you know what Colossus does basically. I don't know if your viewers do,
Tell us.
but it's a computer program that feeds in all the data as to the accident, the nature of the accident, nature of the injuries, and it comes up with a figure. And not only does it come up with a figure, it's the ceiling at which they're going to pay. So if Colossus tells you that a case is worth $13,204, whether it is or
That's
not,
it.
that's the figure you're going to have to accept or go to trial.
Or go to verdict.
Or go to verdict, yes. Because quite frankly, you aren't going to make an offer over $13,204, whether it's fair or not.
And look what that does. It means that the attorney has to be prepared to try a case for $13,200. Has to put a lot of money, his time, and ability in there. And a lot of lawyers trying $13,200 cases, by definition,
you can't-
may not have the experience, and therefore you're going to get a heck of a lot of defendants' verdicts.
Also, you can't make a living out of a $13,204 case, because if you take the expenses out and you count up the time, you're probably working for the minimum wage.
Judge,
Best.
where do you think the future of the tort system will be in 5 years, 10 years?
I think we're going to have, I think the era of conservative juries is upon us. I think it's going to be with us for a very, very long time. I think it's going to move verdicts downwards. I think it's going to make offers, that we have lower offers. And I think we're just going to have to learn to adapt to that new system.
I'm going to give you a crystal ball looking into it. Where is this system going to be in 5 or
Depends
10
on it.
years?
Good economy, bad jurors for plaintiffs. Bad economy, good jurors for plaintiffs. As long as the economy stays steady and good, people are conservative. They're happy. They don't want anything taken away from them. Depression bred great plaintiffs jurors. I hope there's no depression or anything like that. People are interested in keeping what they have. Right now, the economy is very good. Jurors are very bad. So I think that the future is a direct reflection of the economy. And I think if you've ever watched jury verdicts, I bet you that's true.
Interesting.
Ivan, when you select a jury, help us. Do you ever look at the actual body movements?
That's all I look at. I think that you should look at what the people are reading. If somebody is reading the Wall Street Journal and you're a plaintiff's lawyer, you should be very suspicious of that person. If somebody is reading in the daily news, they have the horse racing thing. If they're reading about horses, maybe a better juror for a plaintiff. I'm serious. The books that jurors read, all those things you should watch. Who the juries talk to. Which ones? If you don't like one juror and you find that they're talking across to another juror, that juror that you may think is good may not be so good, because look who they're talking to. I think body movement, how they respond, if they go like this with their hands, be very careful, because that juror is suspicious of you, and I don't think in a short trial you're going to overcome that
I
suspicion.
tend to agree with Ivan. I've watched jury selections, and I watch body language, and body language is very important. It's sometimes much more important than what they say. Many jurors will tell you what they want you to hear, or think they want that you want to hear. And they'll parrot that, or, they'll just go along with it, because they don't want to raise
Ivan,
hackles
in
of
summation,
anybody.
what's your advice to a person who's going to be a potential juror on a case?
What do you mean? I understand.
Well, what's your advice regarding keeping an open mind, not keeping an open
In a
mind?
summation?
In
No,
summation
oh, no.
now. You got 2 seconds left.
I think all of that about being fair, I think it's awful. Plaintiffs' lawyers, can you be fair? Can you be fair? Get rid of that word. It's the most insulting thing to tell a stranger. Can you be fair? Assume they can be fair. Tell them you assume they can be fair. I don't think you belittle jurors.
I think you have to make them feel that they're doing a public service, and then you just have to watch them to see where their empathies are.
Judge Walter Tollip, Acting Justice of the Supreme Court, New York County, thank you for appearing on Law Line. Ivan Schneider, one more time, thank you for appearing on Law Line. And as always, this is Alan Schnorman. Thank you for watching Law Line.
You have been watching Lawline with your host, New York trial attorney Alan Schnorman. Mr. Schnorman will be back with you next week at the same time. If you have any questions about this week's program, please write to Lawline, 63 Wall Street, New York, New York, 10005, or call area code 212-432-9111. This program was made possible by the law firm of Zalman and Schnorman, whose practice is limited to personal injury and insurance law.